In this video, we're going through 15 of the best single-player games that still deserve your time today. These are the kinds of games that people keep coming back to years later. Some changed the industry, some told unforgettable stories, and others simply nailed gameplay so perfectly that they never get old. Whether you missed them the first time or you're thinking about jumping back in for another playthrough, these games prove that great design never expires. Let's get started. Few games manage to feel as alive as Red Dead Redemption 2, and even years later it still sets the bar for open-world storytelling. What makes this game special isn't just the huge map or the insane level of detail, it's how natural everything feels. Riding across the wilderness on horseback, hearing the wind through the trees, stumbling into random encounters on dusty roads, the world constantly feels like it's moving whether you're part of it or not. And then there's Arthur Morgan, easily one of the most memorable protagonists in gaming. His story starts like a typical outlaw tale, but the deeper you go, the more personal and emotional it becomes. On a replay, you start noticing little moments you may have rushed past the first time. Small conversations at camp, quiet character interactions, and choices that slowly shape Arthur's journey. The gameplay itself still holds up really well too, from intense shootouts to slow hunting trips in the mountains. It's the kind of game where you might start a mission, get distracted by something in the world, and suddenly an hour has passed without you realizing it. Even in 2026, Red Dead Redemption 2 still feels like one of the most immersive single-player worlds ever created, and honestly, very few games have managed to reach the same level since. If there's one RPG that people keep coming back to again and again, it's The Witcher 3: Wild Hunt. Even years later, it still feels like one of the most complete single-player adventures ever made. What really makes this game stand out is the storytelling. Almost every quest, even the small side ones, feels like it has real weight behind it. You're not just clearing markers on a map, you're solving strange mysteries, making difficult choices, and sometimes realizing that there isn't really a perfect outcome. Playing as Geralt of Rivia still feels great too. His calm personality, dry humor, and the way he approaches problems make him one of those characters that's just easy to spend dozens of hours with. And the world itself is massive, but never feels empty. From the war-torn lands of Velen to the colorful streets of Novigrad and the beautiful islands of Skellige, every area has its own personality. On a replay, you start noticing how many small details and hidden stories you missed the first time. Maybe you make different choices, maybe you explore more, or maybe you finally dive into the incredible expansions that many fans consider just as good as the main story. Either way, The Witcher 3 still proves that a well-written RPG can stay relevant for many years, and even in 2026, it remains one of the best single-player journeys you can experience. There's a reason people keep joking that Skyrim never truly goes away. No matter how many years pass, players somehow always find themselves returning to this world, and honestly, it's easy to see why. The moment you step into Skyrim's snowy mountains and open landscapes, you immediately get that sense of freedom. You're not pushed down a strict path. You can follow the main story, join different factions, explore random caves, or just wander around and see what happens. Sometimes the best moments in Skyrim aren't even planned. You might start heading toward a quest marker and suddenly get distracted by a hidden dungeon, a dragon attack, or a strange NPC interaction that turns into a completely new adventure. That unpredictable feeling is what makes the game so replayable. And even though the game originally released years ago, it still holds up surprisingly well because of its atmosphere and its ability to let players create their own story. Every playthrough feels a little different depending on how you build your character or which paths you decide to follow. Whether you play as a powerful mage, a stealthy assassin, or a warrior charging straight into battle, Skyrim always gives you room to experiment. In 2026, it still feels like one of the purest open-world RPG experiences ever made, and honestly, it's one of those games that many players never truly stop replaying. Even after all these years, Grand Theft Auto 5 still feels incredibly fun to jump back into. What makes this game stand out isn't just the massive open world of Los Santos, but the way it tells its story through three completely different characters. Switching between Michael, Franklin, and Trevor keeps the narrative fresh because each of them brings their own personality and perspective. Michael feels like a retired criminal trying to deal with a messy family life. Franklin is the guy looking for a way out of the streets, and Trevor is pure chaos. That mix creates some unforgettable moments throughout the story. But beyond the main missions, the world itself is packed with things to do. You can go from pulling off huge cinematic heists to randomly causing trouble in the city within minutes. And that freedom is part of why the game is still so replayable. On another playthrough, you might notice small details in the world, different dialogue between characters, or alternate choices during certain missions. The driving, shooting, and mission design still feel smooth even today, which is impressive for a game that's been around this long. In 2026, GTA 5 remains one of those single-player experiences that's just easy to revisit because every time you return to Los Santos, something unexpected ends up happening. When God of War released in 2018, it didn't just continue the series, it completely reinvented it. Instead of the fast, chaotic hack-and-slash style the older games were known for, this version slowed things down and focused on something deeper. Right from the beginning, the story between Kratos and his son Atreus pulls you in. Kratos is no longer just an angry god slayer. He's older, quieter, and trying to be a better father, even though he clearly struggles with it. That relationship grows naturally as the journey unfolds, and by the time you reach the later parts of the story, those small conversations between them start to hit surprisingly hard. The combat also feels incredibly satisfying. The Leviathan axe is one of those weapons that never gets old to use, especially when you throw it across the battlefield and call it right back into your hand. It's simple, but it always feels powerful. And then there's the world itself. Exploring the realms of Norse mythology feels mysterious and atmospheric, with hidden paths, challenging enemies, and puzzles scattered throughout the journey. What makes the game even better on a replay is noticing how carefully everything is connected, from the storytelling to the world design. Even in 2026, God of War 2018 still feels like one of the most polished and emotionally powerful single-player adventures ever made. Some games tell a good story, and then there are games like The Last of Us Part 1 that stay with you long after the credits roll. At its core, this is a simple journey across a broken world, but the emotional weight behind it is what makes it unforgettable. You play as Joel, a hardened survivor who's been through more loss than most people could handle, and along the way, he's forced to protect Ellie, a teenager who slowly becomes much more than just someone he's escorting. What makes the experience so powerful is how natural their relationship feels. The conversations, the quiet moments while exploring abandoned buildings, and the small bits of humor between them all make the story feel incredibly human. Gameplay-wise, it's tense in the best way. Resources are limited, every fight feels dangerous, and sometimes avoiding enemies is the smarter choice. That constant pressure keeps you fully invested in every encounter. And on a replay, the story somehow hits even harder because you already understand where the journey is going. You start noticing the little hints and emotional beats that build toward the ending. Even in 2026, The Last of Us Part 1 remains one of the most powerful storytelling experiences in gaming, and it's still absolutely worth revisiting. When people talk about the best superhero games ever made, Batman, Arkham City almost always comes up, and honestly, it still deserves that spot. This game takes everything that worked in the previous entry and expands it into a much bigger and more open playground. Instead of being stuck inside a single asylum, you're now free to glide across the dark streets and rooftops of Arkham City, which immediately makes you feel like the real Batman. Moving around the city is half the fun on its own. Gliding between buildings, diving down toward enemies, and landing silently behind criminals never really gets old. The combat also still feels incredibly smooth. The free flow system lets you chain punches, counters, gadgets, and takedowns together in a way that makes every fight look almost cinematic once you get the rhythm down. And then there's the story, which is packed with iconic villains and twists that keep things interesting from start to finish. On a replay, you start to appreciate how well everything fits together, from the side missions to the hidden secrets scattered around the city. Even the challenge maps and Riddler puzzles give you a reason to keep exploring long after the main story ends. Years later, Batman, Arkham City still captures that fantasy of being the world's greatest detective and protector of Gotham better than almost any other superhero game out there.
If he gets up, I'm gonna knock you boys down. Permanently.
When people talk about the golden age of story-driven RPGs, Mass Effect 2 is almost always part of that conversation. What makes this game so special isn't just the sci-fi setting or the action-packed missions, it's the crew you build along the way. As Commander Shepard, your main goal is to assemble a team for what feels like an impossible mission, and every character you recruit has their own story, personality, and struggles. Some are loyal soldiers, some are dangerous outcasts, and others are just trying to survive in a brutal galaxy. The interesting part is that the game actually gives you time to understand them. Their loyalty missions are some of the most memorable moments in the entire series because they make each character feel important instead of just being background companions. The choices you make throughout the journey also carry real weight. By the time you reach the final mission, everything you've done up to that point suddenly matters, and the tension becomes very real because not everyone is guaranteed to make it out alive. On a replay, the experience becomes even more interesting because you can experiment with different decisions, different relationships, and different outcomes. Even in 2026, Mass Effect 2 still stands as one of the best examples of how powerful storytelling and player choice can be in a single-player RPG.
Firing a high-impact shot.
Few games manage to be as clever and endlessly entertaining as Portal 2, and even years later, it still surprises you with just how smart and fun it is. On the surface, it's a puzzle game about using a portal gun to navigate test chambers, but it's so much more than that. The level design is brilliant, constantly forcing you to think in ways that feel fresh and challenging without ever being unfair. Then, there's the writing. Characters like GLaDOS and Wheatley are unforgettable, not just for their humor, but because they actually make you care about the story as you solve each puzzle. The dialogue is sharp, witty, and full of little moments that stick with you long after you've finished a level, and the pacing is perfect. Every puzzle builds on the last, teaching you new mechanics gradually while keeping you on your toes. On a replay, you start noticing all the clever environmental storytelling, hidden jokes, and even subtleties in the level design you might have missed the first time. Portal 2 is one of those rare games where the combination of story, humor, and gameplay makes it timeless, and in 2026, it still feels as fresh and inventive as it did on release.
More precise, how it does not. Momentum, a function of mass and velocity, is conserved.
Even more than a decade after its release, Half-Life 2 still feels like a masterclass in how to combine story, gameplay, and world design seamlessly. From the very first moments in City 17, you're thrown into a world that feels alive, oppressive, and just believable enough that it pulls you in completely. The physics-based gameplay was revolutionary at the time, and even today, using the gravity gun to manipulate objects, solve puzzles, or improvise in combat still feels incredibly satisfying. The pacing is perfect too. Moments of tension and action are balanced with quieter sequences that let the story breathe, and the supporting characters like Alex add real emotional weight without ever slowing the game down. On a replay, you notice the little environmental storytelling touches that make the world feel lived in, like the graffiti, abandoned apartments, and scattered audio logs that hint at the larger story behind the Combine occupation. There's a reason this game is still referenced and admired decades later. Half-Life 2 isn't just a shooter, it's a blueprint for how single-player games can fully immerse players in a compelling, interactive world. And in 2026, it's still absolutely worth experiencing from start to finish. When it comes to blending history, action, and a gripping story, Assassin's Creed 2 still stands out as one of the best. Stepping into the shoes of Ezio Auditore in Renaissance Italy is instantly captivating. The cities feel alive, full of bustling streets, towering cathedrals, and hidden alleys that beg to be explored. What really sets this game apart is how it balances its storytelling with freedom. You're following Ezio's personal journey from a reckless young noble to a master assassin, and the way the narrative unfolds alongside historical events feels surprisingly natural. Parkour and climbing never get old either. Scaling towers, leaping across rooftops, and performing daring assassinations feels satisfying every single time. Even years later, revisiting the game highlights how well-crafted the missions and side quests are, with enough variety to keep you engaged without ever feeling repetitive. On a replay, you notice all the small details you might have missed the first time, the clever use of disguises, hidden collectibles, and subtle storytelling in NPC interactions. In 2026, Assassin's Creed 2 still proves why it's considered a classic, combining exploration, story, and action in a way that few games manage to match.
Come on then, this way.
Where are you going?
You'll see.
Few games manage to blend atmosphere, story, and gameplay as perfectly as BioShock, and even years later, it still feels like a masterpiece. From the moment you descend into Rapture, the game's underwater city, you're immediately struck by its unique mix of beauty and decay. Every hallway, poster, and shattered window tells a story, and the eerie music combined with distant sounds of enemies creates constant tension. What makes the game so memorable isn't just the environment, it's how it weaves narrative directly into gameplay. Choices you make, the way you approach combat, and the use of plasmids to create chaotic or creative solutions all make you feel like you're shaping the story yourself. On a replay, the layers of Rapture's history become even more fascinating, from hidden audio logs to subtle environmental storytelling you might have missed before. Even the shocking twists hit hard the second time because you notice the foreshadowing sprinkled throughout. In 2026, BioShock still stands as one of those single-player games that feels timeless, proving that atmosphere, story, and player choice can combine into an unforgettable experience.
Eleanor's grown now, baby snatcher. Even after what you did to her, Dr. Lamb found a way to shape that girl into...
Few games manage to combine stealth, open-world freedom, and deep storytelling as boldly as Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. From the moment you step into the deserts and mountains of Afghanistan and Africa, the scale and realism of the world immediately hit you. The freedom to approach missions your way, sneaking past enemies, using distractions, or going in guns blazing makes every encounter feel unique. Then there's the base management system, which adds another layer of strategy and progression, giving you a reason to keep coming back between missions. Story-wise, it's classic Kojima, a mix of epic narratives, surprising twists, and sometimes absurd humor that somehow fits perfectly within the larger emotional arc of Venom Snake's journey. On a replay, you start noticing all the tiny details in the environment, alternate mission approaches, and clever enemy AI interactions that make stealth so satisfying. Despite its age, MGSV, The Phantom Pain still stands as one of the most ambitious and engaging single-player experiences, showing how a game can be both massive in scope and highly personal at the same time, even in 2026. Few games manage to make fear, curiosity, and triumph feel so tightly woven together like Bloodborne. From the first steps into Yharnam, you're immediately thrown into a world that's dark, twisted, and beautiful all at once. The Gothic architecture, eerie streets, and unsettling enemies constantly keep you on edge, but the thrill of mastering its combat is incredibly rewarding. Unlike other games that let you slowly power up, Bloodborne pushes you to be aggressive, precise, and adaptive. Every fight is tense, every victory earned. The lore is dense and mysterious, hiding its secrets in item descriptions, environmental storytelling, and cryptic dialogue, which makes exploring the world feel like uncovering a hidden narrative. On a replay, you notice how carefully the levels are crafted, how enemy placements and shortcuts are designed, and how your own understanding of the mechanics allows for a completely different, more confident experience. Even in 2026, Bloodborne continues to captivate with its blend of fear, beauty, and challenge, proving that nothing quite matches its dark, immersive world in single-player gaming. Few games manage to blend gameplay, story, and emotion as uniquely as Nier Automata. On the surface, it looks like an action RPG with fast-paced combat and stylish moves, but it's really so much more. The game constantly surprises you, not just with epic fights or fluid platforming, but with how it makes you think about morality, purpose, and the nature of existence. Every playthrough slowly reveals new perspectives, and the story actually evolves depending on how far you've gotten and which character you're controlling. Combat feels weighty, yet fluid, and switching between ranged attacks, melee combos, and flight sequences keeps things constantly engaging. On a replay, the small details you missed the first time, hidden conversations, subtle world-building elements, or different endings become incredibly rewarding. And the music. It hits differently every single time, intensifying every emotional and action-packed moment. Even in 2026, Nier Automata continues to stand out as one of the most ambitious and unforgettable single-player experiences, blending gameplay and storytelling in a way few games ever manage. And there you have it, 15 of the best single-player games still worth playing in 2026. Each of these titles proves that incredible gameplay, unforgettable stories, and immersive worlds don't just belong to the past. They're experiences that stay with you, whether it's your first playthrough or your fifth. I want to hear from you. Which of these games have you already played, and which ones are you thinking of revisiting? Or maybe there's a single-player gem we didn't include that you think deserves a spot on the list. Drop it in the comments. I love seeing what games people keep coming back to. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any future gaming guides, lists, and reviews. Now go grab a controller. One of these classics is waiting for you.